Dr. Maury, Uncivilized Vitality, and this is a packing video or another gear guide for our upcoming cabin camp. So this will be for the couple local chapters, the Turtles and the Eagles, which is our kids chapter. So this is a dual event, so everybody's mixing the Eagles and the Turtles. So when you come to cabin camp, if you talk to Bonnie at admin or Emily, they'll let you know that some of us are going to be staying overnight for a couple nights, Friday, Saturday, and I think most of the participants are going to be coming up for the day's event on Saturday, which starts at 10 a.m. or noon, I forget. But when you start, what do you bring? A couple things let's go over in this list for the two different categories. You're staying at the cabins, or you're staying up there with us, or you're just coming up for Saturday. So first of all, if you're staying overnight, we're going to need some sleeping gear. If you're coming up just for the day, you're also going to need to prioritize your shelter and covering clothing element, because that's going to be our primary. So when we're outside in the winter in Michigan, clothing is the first thing we want to address, because that is, as far as the rule of threes go, that is controlling our body temperature. It comes right after first aid if you're having any kind of bleeding or breathing issues. So there will be, of course, as always on all Uncivilized Vitality events, full trauma kits and the full trauma bag in the car. And then if you have one, you have your little Mini Max med kit on your person all the time, which is the Mini Max med kit's kind of a combination of a boo-boo bag, ouch pouch, and an improvised first aid or trauma pack. So you got your first aid with you. Next thing you want to talk about is your clothing. So there are three areas we want to, well, more than that. Let's call it head and neck, hands and feet, and then sleeping. And if you're not going to be sleeping, staying up at the cabin, let's just concentrate on head and neck. First and foremost, if you're going to be outside, you need to think about your head and neck covering. You have to have a hat. I don't mean a boonie hat. I mean, you can wear your boonie hat if it's not too cold out and you don't mind your ears. It's more like a hillbilly hat. Then you just wear a boonie hat to keep the sun off, or maybe it's just not that cold. You could go all the way, if it's really cold out, with an improvised, not improvised, but with a Michigan hat, a Yooper's hat sometimes called. I've heard them called trapper hats. Since I'm from Michigan, we've always called them Yooper hats. Right? So you could bring that if you're really cold or prone to cold. That's a great hat to have. Or just a wool beanie. Like I'm always wearing my wool beanie. Or just a watch cap, something you can take to keep your head warm. I'm going to suggest if you're sleeping, you bring two. You bring a beanie or a hat during the day, and then you bring a second beanie or something warm to sleep in at night. Right? You could also, I'm sure we got a video on this somewhere. If we don't, you could also wear a hood. Right? This is a hood. I'm never sure if I'm saying this right or not. This is a hood that's kind of a hood combination, hood and scarf. Keeps my head warm, covers my chest and shoulders. Skjaldarharmon. I'm not sure how to say that. Here's another hood I've made out of an old wool blanket. Right, so it covers my chest and back and neck, and I've got my head trapped in this hood of wool, so it keeps me nice and warm. Might be a little too warm. So if you don't have one of those, you can use your multi-use hood, or your Uncivilized Vitality multi-hood, not only to carry stuff around, but use it as a scarf and hood combo. Speaking of which, once you get your beanie hat or your Yooper hat or a hood you've made, the next thing you want to keep warm is your neck. So make sure you bring a scarf. This is just a woolen scarf. Right? Just wraps around my neck. I tuck that in the top of my shirt, helps keep the wind out. It is shocking the amount, the difference that having a scarf around your neck will make. You could bring that scarf. You could just take your Uncivilized bandana or shamog style and wrap that up and around. This will work. The main issue with these is almost always made of cotton, which has its other uses, but keeping you warm over the long term is not a good idea. So you have one made of wool or a silk wild rag. These are used traditionally to keep the neck warm. There's a little neckerchief, or I can set that here to my neck, cross that around, make a little knot or tuck that into my shirt, and now I've kept heat in around my neck. You'd be surprised, again, I'd say being out all day, the difference that a simple silk scarf or wool scarf and a beanie makes as far as staying warm. You could also, this is another uncivilized trick we use, is use one of these neck gaiters. This is a little one made out of wool. It's just a tube and it slips down over my head and just rides around on my neck. Buff brand is a good one. This has the added benefit, if my coat is buttoned up, that if it gets really cold, I can pull that up over my nose and face. And then combined with my beanie, just with my eyes and the bridge of my nose showing, this is pretty warm. A couple of my boys don't like this. In particular, I've heard other people say it because it gets kind of moist from your breath, breathing out. But they have their uses. And at night, maybe my beanie is saturated because I've been wearing it out in the weather all day. I could just throw this buff up here as an improvised sleeping beanie or hood. All right, so that's not a bad idea to have one. Not a bad idea to have an extra one of those along as well. So, hat. First and foremost, have a good hat, have a dry one to sleep in, or a backup buff, silk bandana, or a dedicated scarf, or maybe you sew yourself one of those Skjaldarharmon fancy hoods. I'm sure we've done a video on that. If I haven't, then we'll do one pretty soon. You can look them up online. Just look up like Viking reenactment hoods or medieval hoods. There's patterns all over. You can just whip one up real quick. And then you got a combination scarf and hood. All right, so head and neck. Next, hands and feet. Obviously, you're going to need to bring an appropriate set of footwear. These are just my heavy thin slate winter edition muck boots. These will keep my feet dry and warm. The payoff there, or the trade-off there, is they're a little slick. I do tend to fall down a lot when I'm wearing these, but you do need a pair of boots for being outside and walking around all day. When we go inside the cabins to regroup or warm up, and or if you're staying overnight, you will need a second set of footwear because we take our boots off in the cabin to keep the floor dry. Bring a set of Crocs. I forgot what the hell these are called. Crocs. Get the 4-wheel drive mode. Something to wear around inside the cabin. You could bring a pair of just slippers to wear around inside the cabin. You don't want to walk around just in your socks because it's a concrete floor and the heat conduction loss would be too much. And we don't want to wear wet boots around. So obviously appropriate outdoor winter footwear, the boots, and then a second pair of shoes to wear inside, right? Even if you're not staying. And I'm going to talk about socks briefly. This is just a short pair of low-cut wool socks by Darn Tough. These are great for me most of the year, but when I'm outside all day in the winter, I'll bring the actual boot socks or a long pair of wool socks. I'm not even going to make any other suggestions. Get some wool socks. Okay, so socks and shoes. Hands. You need a pair of gloves. You can bring, what do I do with all the gloves? You can bring a pair of gloves or even a pair of mittens. Mittens are great. And again, I'm going to suggest 2 pairs, maybe a thin pair of just mechanics gloves, right? These simple little gloves for inside an oversized pair of mittens, or maybe some leather gloves that have a little bit of insulation or felt sort of lining inside. And then have a second pair of gloves. Just like having a second hat, having a second set of gloves is a good idea. And then having the second set of shoes for inside the cabin. So you need 2 hats, 2 sets of gloves, and 2 pair of shoes. An extra scarf or something you can use to wrap around yourself while you're outside. And then obviously you're going to want to bring some sort of coat, or this is just like a puffy vest, some sort of insulation while you're outside, so it keeps you warm. All right, so as far as clothing goes, dress appropriately. If you're going to plan on staying the weekend out in the woods with us at the so-called cabin camp, bring a second set of head coverings to sleep in, neck scarf, maybe some extra shoes for inside the cabin when we regroup, and some extra gloves that you can use while you dry out. And obviously, your extra pair of socks, which always goes along with what we're doing outdoors. So that's the clothing you will want to bring with you. The people that are sleeping over, you're going to need something to sleep on. And I suggest some kind of, these are the ones we loan out from the UV storeroom, some sort of air mattress and or a closed cell foam sleeping pad. It doesn't hurt in the winter to bring both. You're also going to want some sort of barrier to lay on, right? Some sort of barrier to lay on to keep your air mattress or foam pad out of the snow, or if you're sleeping inside the cabin, it's just a cement slab floor. If you don't get there in time to claim one of the bunks, then you'll be sleeping on the floor. Or maybe the adults are going to sleep in the bunks and you're going to put the kids on the floor. That's fine too. Make sure you have a couple of layers. You're going to put down a vapor barrier or waterproof layer like this garbage bag, or one of these reflective, let me see if I can show you, one of these reflective space blankets. You lay that right down. Then you can put down your pad, your sleeping pad, or if you don't have those, you don't have to go out and buy them. You have a blanket, preferably a wool blanket, especially for the kids. Just fold that into thirds and lay it out, and they've got a nice cushy surface to sleep on. Then sleeping in, sleeping bag, or another pair of wool blankets to sleep under. The cabin is going to be fairly warm inside once we get it heated up, so you don't have to worry about that too much. But you want to sleep comfortably. Need something to sleep on, a couple pads, one pad, some sort of moisture barrier to lay on top of, and then 1, 2, or 3 blankets, or a couple blankets and a sleeping bag. Another thing you might want to consider, I'm just gonna throw all this stuff off there, is a blanket that you sleep with, but maybe like this stadium blanket that's got some weather resistance on one side and sort of this soft furry inside, is a blanket to wear around inside the cabin or just to drape around for extra warmth as we sit around the fire at night. A blanket that you wouldn't mind either getting wet from falling snow or you're not going to sleep with it specifically, just sort of an extra blanket to wear around. You could bring if you have a house robe, you could bring that too, I guess. But so let's talk about that's all you need for clothing. Something, if you're going to be sleeping, make sure you bring the appropriate blankets, sleeping bags, and things to sleep on. What you're going to sleep under is going to be the cabin, so you don't have to worry about bringing your tarp or your pitch kit to make a shelter. You'll be sleeping inside. Hands and feet, extra shoes for inside that are clean, appropriate footwear, boots for walking around all day, extra socks, always extra socks, some sort of scarf, extra hat. Now, what other gear do you need? We've already mentioned potentially bringing a survival or space blanket, gum rubber blanket, reflective blanket. They're called all sorts of things. We can use this in our day pack because we're going to practice setting up some shelters. If you don't have a space blanket that you can practice setting up some shelters, especially the eagles, then you can just bring a garbage bag, or we'll issue one, or if you have a poncho. So you can use these 3 things interchangeably. You could bring all 3, keep the poncho for sleet and wet weather and shelter preparation, the garbage bag as a backup poncho or something to sit on, and the space blanket for primarily your ground cover to sleep on, or you can make a tarp out of it. But these 3 are typically interchangeable. So if you have this space blanket, you could use that to keep the rain and sleet off. You can make a shelter and use it on the ground. Ditto for the garbage bag and for the poncho. And I think as far as cost investment goes, super cheap garbage bag, less than $20 for a space blanket, and then anywhere between 30 and 50 for a good USTI poncho. This is just the UTS or UST brand. You get these off of Walmart. I mean, there are some that are better made than others, but just for this event where we're going to practice putting these into a shelter configuration, just pick something up relatively cheap. Arcturus is a great brand. So you need one of those on the trail. You're also going to need some form of wood processing device. I would suggest a small folding saw, so it's light and easy to carry. You will need some cordage. You can just bring your pitch kit or grab an extra hank of paracord out of that if you don't have a pitch kit or a cordage kit. And of course your fast rope and a carabiner. Okay. So let me write some of those down. You will need a poncho / space blanket or a drum liner, which is that giant garbage bag. Okay. You need a saw. You need your fast rope and cordage. Okay. You will need, because we're going to be out for the day, a cup and a water bottle, one of which must be able to go into the fire to purify and process your water or melt your snow. Canteen cup combo. Okay. You need your boo-boo kit or your Mini-Max med kit, although if you don't have one, that's okay. I won't even write that down. You're going to need a shovel. We have several of these shovels. We're just going to issue these for the event so the kids can practice doing some of the outdoor stuff with the shovels in the winter. These are collapsible snow shovels. If you have one, bring it. If you don't, then we'll have some that we can all practice some of the skills together with, improvised shelter building and such with these little shovels. So if you don't have a shovel, we'll get you a shovel. And then you will need the usual things, right? You'll need a personal knife, fire, whistle or signaling. That'll go under your book category, ways to signal each other. So you're going to have, the kids are especially going to have the whistles on them at all time, some way to start fire, and of course their personal knife, all of which I keep just in my little daily pouch. Now the other gear, your shelter kit, meaning your cordage, your saw, your fast rope, your water bottle, you're going to need something to carry that in. So you're going to want to bring a small, like a draw, this is the Uncivilized Vitality, just a drawstring bag, right? Or a small backpack. What is this? Yeah, just a small little day bag, this little lake and trail bag. We usually carry stakes in that. Some little bag that you can put your poncho, your cordage, your saw, and your things in from you walking around during the day. You're also going to want to put, did I lose my marker? All right. Snacks. Snacks for the day. We're going to do something that's the equivalent of one meal. We're going to stop and prepare that. You'll want to maybe bring some water with you that's pre-filled in your canteen so you don't have to stop and melt snow every 20 minutes. But we're going to eat a snack out on the trail. We're going to be doing different events. We're going to do the self-rescue and cold water immersion and ice safety demonstration. Don't really call that, but we're going to be dealing with cold water and how to rescue if you've made the mistake of being on ice and have fallen in. We're going to practice treating hypothermia while we're out there with the shelter construction and building a fire, so you'll need those things. Right? But you want some snacks. And then, what was I saying? All the stuff you're going to carry in a bag, you can bring a dedicated backpack, or in the interest of our tenet of minimalism, bring yourself a hood, an Uncivilized multi-hood, which is just that hoop of cloth. We've got several videos on those. You can throw that around and use that to warm up, right? If it gets a little cold, then while you're walking, you can strip that down so you're not getting overheated and run it over your shoulder. If it gets a little blustery, with that little twist, throw it up blustery, as my friend Pooh Bear would say. Right? So the multi-hood can perform a lot of different can fill a lot of different categories for you. So you can use it as a scarf, a hood, an extra warming layer, use it as an extra blanket. I can use this to, as we've demonstrated several times in many videos or on our events, I can throw my poncho in there and put my cordage, my saw, my fast rope, my canteen and cup. I can dump all that down in there, maybe my space blanket, my extra socks, maybe my shoes or my slippers. Then you just give that a twist, wind that all up, flip it over, and then you've got a way to carry your gear with you, hands free, so you've got everything you need with you. And then when you stop, you can drop that down, get your stuff out, and we can do all the different tasks that we're going to practice at winter camp. So, I think that's enough for the gear. You won't need a lot of stuff, so it's just basically a day event. You just have to prepare for the weather. You're going to be outside all day, although we might take some rewarming stops in the cabins, in which case you'll need some dry shoes. Extra gear, including your sleeping materials, extra blankets. Those would be if you're planning on, you've already contacted the UV admin and let them know that you're going to be participating in the overnight. So, what else? Oh, bring, I've lost my marker again. Over here with your normal fire, don't forget your light. So always bring your little headlamp or a pocket flashlight, so that if we're out on the trail and it gets dark, because this is or the beginning of winter in Michigan, northern Michigan, it's going to get dark about 4:30 or 5, and we're probably going to be out until it gets dark, be walking back, so you'll want to have a light with you so we don't have to stumble back in the dark. Even a glow stick, just having a standard chem light with you all the time. I'm sure I've got one in here. Yeah. So having a chem light you can crack and use as a light source is always a good idea. So don't need a lot of camping or hiking gear. It's going to be just a day expedition, just the extra stuff if you're going to sleep. Go back through the video and hit pause and go through it little by little. Make sure you've got all that stuff. And if there's anything else I think of, I will make an addendum to the video or in the description. We'll put that in. And then you should be good. So that's what you need for cabin camp. Get packed up. Let us know if you need anything from the storeroom besides the stuff we're going to provide. Make sure the kids stay warm. We will have some, we'll stop for warm drinks and keep them hydrated and have snacks so the kids are ready to go. We will be doing some sledding, hopefully. We'll be doing a bunch of different activities, but outside all day long. Just think ahead for that. And that's it. Turn on notifications, subscribe to the channel, share the video, comment below if there's anything you think I've forgotten that maybe would be a good idea to bring. Just pack with the idea of minimizing the gear you bring. For instance, garbage bag can fulfill a lot of different roles. Same thing with a space blanket. A multi-hood can fill a lot of different roles. If you can bring one piece of gear that fills 3 different uses, that's more efficient that way. It stays with our tenet of minimizing to maximize. Okay, that's it.